Hello and welcome to Leagues Behind, the vodcast of the Arena Gauntlet League, which looks backwards at tournaments we've already run in the hopes of analyzing them to see where we went wrong and where we went right. Today, I am talking with Adam S., who won the tournament we're going to be talking about, which is March of the Machine, not March of the Machines, as you might want to call the set or the tournament, but March of the Machine, which ran all the way back in April 2023, and of which Adam was the winner. I'm your host, Christopher York. I'm the founder of the AGL, the tournament organizer, and part of, I guess, a sort of like a hand on the rudder of the league committee now and again. Adam still is in the league committee. He's one of our central members, and spoke to him most recently about his principal design on the Spider-Man tournament, which is, I think, going great guns. Do you have any sort of like Spider feels to share at the drop of the episode, Adam?
It's doing what I wanted it to do, so we'll see if it's doing what players wanted it to do. I think really happy with where we landed, the balance between heroes and villains, how that's playing out with custom packs. I'm liking all of that. I like watching the packs roll in and seeing who picks what. So it's doing what I want. I hate the set, so big handicap for the league design, but I think we've done a pretty good job.
Like we spun some gold out of lead. I was convinced this morning. I was listening to our sister podcast, Hunt the Week, and if we got John P on board, and he's singing its praises, I think we've won over a pretty tough customer, and I think he speaks for a lot of people when he says he's enjoying the tournament in spite of the set.
Yeah, a lot of people have stopped playing limited, me included, and are just playing the league as their basically whole Spider-Man experience. I've heard that from several people, so I'm here for it. That worked for me.
I'm still playing to grind my wild cards, but that's just basically it. That's what I got to do. And through the Omen Paths as a sort of non-spidery themed offering, I do think some of the gameplay is unique. It's enjoyable in its own right. It's certainly a unique format, one that we won't forget, and sure better than Alchemy. Now that's a low bar to clear. That's a low bar to clear.
Yeah. Woof.
But we're not here to talk about Spider-Man today or the current laurels that are thrown your way, but rather the past laurels. Now, this was 2 years and change in the rearview mirror, the March of the Machine tournament. Adam, can you tell us, were you with the league committee back then, or you just started, or were you just about to join, or what's the story there? My memory's terribly imperfect with regard to this. This is before we started putting credits on the rule set in terms of like who was there and had their finger in the design pie.
Oh yeah, I was on. I just joined, so
Yeah.
I came on. I think as we were playing one league, one being the set right before this, where the heroes try to stop the Phyrexian invasion by invading Phyrexia or Phyrexia, and that led into this. And I joined then. We'd just done Plane Chase as well, and I think the only league this was maybe my first league design. I was involved, I guess, in Shadows Remastered, which came out just before this set, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, because you just did Shadows with Richard.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was my second league that I was involved in.
This felt like an epic tournament to me. But looking back at the registration, there were only 81 players in the tank, if you can believe it. But this, I mean, just in terms of the flavor, the mechanics, the tournament experience, this will stand out for me as one of the sort of epic wins. Just to sort of put my cards on the table at the beginning of the vodcast. What was your feeling about this? Do you feel like we could have done better? We hit it right on the head. I mean, I think that, well, first let's go over the mechanics. Let's give people the content of what we're talking about. So I'll give you the description here. The first mechanic outside of the regular league formula, right, which is that you play with a 60-card deck, 6 packs of Mom. You take a pack on every loss, and you make your deck better over 6 weeks of play if you do very well. or 3 or 4 if you don't. The first finesse on this, and these are remarkably interesting and nuanced and complicated mechanics, even though they only take up 3 paragraphs of rule space. The first is the multiplanar invasion, which reads, for this tournament, players can open, we still call them punishment packs back then instead of comeback packs, from any Explorer legal set. Explorer legal sounds kind of cute now too, given where Explorer has gone or hasn't gone. Upon match losses, with a maximum of 5 of these packs being from March the Machines. So even back then, we had roughly an idea of what makes for a healthy mix of onset versus offset packs. And coming from one, we wanted to add some spice to the tournament. Not too much spice, so it didn't feel like March of the Machine, but enough. And I think that back then is when we started honing on the number of like somewhere between a third and a quarter of the packs or the cards should be offset in order to sort of let a little light shine in. And so this was a maximum of 5 packs being from Mom meant that you had your core packs, which were 6, and then you could add 5 for a total of 11 out of a possible 16 packs, which is roughly like a third, right, of offset packs, which is where we probably would have liked things. So let's maybe, we can't really talk about the multiplanar invasion without talking about the planar conquest mechanic, which is tied to it. So let's talk about that. At the end of each week of play, the 2 most frequently chosen non-March of the Machine Explorer legal sets are removed as options for punishment packs upon match losses. Now, if I recall correctly, back then we probably would have had around 24 sets that were Explorer legal, thereabouts. Maybe my math's off a little bit, but it was enough. And 2 of the most popular sets would be taken off the menu of options that you could choose from week by week. So it starts off pretty powerful. You've got to do some strategic decisions as to where you want to invest your comeback packs or punishment packs, as we called them, before those sets disappeared entirely and you no longer had access. So there's a bit of a race, and maybe you can speak a little bit about that idea of the planar conquest and the multiplanar invasion.
Yeah, so I do think this was a watershed league, maybe. Like, this was, I mean, where we were at the time in our tournament design. Mostly our 6-week leagues were pretty conservative, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So in the lead up to this, we'd had a lot of sets where the comeback pack is sort of like maybe you choose between 2 or you can re-roll. We've done a lot of mechanics like that in the year before this.
Yeah.
So we'd gotten down the basic formula. It was working really well. We were really happy with it. And I think around here, maybe just a bit before here, we started getting a little bit more experimental. We had the Plane Chase League. Then we did the One League, which was pretty vanilla, except it had the twist that you could convert your entire pool to packs of 1 at some point and re-roll your entire starting pool and all your packs. So getting just, we're in this space where we were iterating on the core mechanic without going too far afield. And I think this was one of our really big jumps forward in terms of what we were doing. So I do think that's how I remember it, really. Like, it was really engaging, the mechanic. Like, really, people were really into what packs are going to go. Should I take my Mom packs now, or should I take offset ones before they disappear?
Yep.
And I think that worked out perfectly. It was just a really elegant system for solving this. So for in terms of what packs do we make available, how do we stop certain overpowered packs from taking over, things like that. So I think there was a really cool space to be designing in there, and it was very popular. It's probably part of the reason that we've grown so much as we started doing these league concepts that were just pushing the envelope a little bit more, and I think they really built up a kind of hype that kept people coming back. They got people bringing their friends, that really people talked about when new people joined, that
Hmm.
refer back to these cool concepts. I think that's probably a big part of the story of how we've kind of grown into the community that we are now, where we're getting 4 times this number of people registering, even for pretty bad sets sometimes.
Yeah, so I mean, looking back at it, I think the strategic complexity and interest is there, but also like the flavor is just dead on. Like the multiverse is collapsing, the machine is marching, and places are being taken over, and you can no longer visit them because the Phyrexians have taken over. And I think that following after one league, right, where you were kind of forced into a mono set, and this is more of like a plane chase style trip across the multiverse. It's a nice contrast. It kind of felt freeing, I guess, is the way to put it. After having a sort of mono set league in Shadows over Innistrad as well, we were kind of ready
Yeah.
for this as an audience, as a player base, and yeah, I don't know, man. Looking back on it, it seems kind of hype. I'm not sure how, like, I don't know if we want to run this every single time. I don't know how many times we could replay the Phyrexian tour of the multiverse. But if you had to sort of rerun this tournament now, what would you change, if anything? What
Oh,
spin or
interesting.
finesse would you put on it? I mean, we have had similar kinds of mechanics. I guess most recently in Edge of Eternities, right?
Yeah, so I
Where
think Edge of Eternities was inspired by this,
yeah,
and I really like that. Uh, I mean, maybe I'll even say before answering that question, like a little bit about the design process of this. I was looking back through it a little bit, and it was really interesting to see where we were at, and it kind of informs this question that you're asking because the original pitches for this league were kind of all over the place. There were some really cool things in this set, right? So what this set had that was unique, it had the invasion, which is the theme we ended up landing on.
yeah,
It had the battles type,
yeah,
which is a new type that's never returned in the several years since this set. Uh, it had a legendary bonus sheet,
yep,
and it had team ups between legendary characters from across the multiverse, which I'd kind of forgotten about. But that was actually a really big part of our league design discussion. So
yep,
we were and sorry, before I got it also had Aftermath,
yes.
which at the time we had no idea what it would be.
And we had no idea
And
what to do with it.
yeah, we didn't know what to do with it. And so we pitched all these ideas around these different things in the set. So there was talk of this being a 6-week partner league
Hmm.
or a divided league, a split league where partway through the league, the invasion ends, whatever the aftermath starts. That was one idea that we had. Uh, we also, the originating idea that became what we went with had to do with having battles where you kind of invade a plane and someone defends it, and the winner gets the pack from that plane, and there's a limited number
Yeah.
of packs from each set. And, so we ended up with something very similar to that, but without sort of the complexity. Somebody, we got some suggestions and really stripped it down to its kind of core element, which was eliminating sets and being able to choose from any of the sets in the history of or Arena, any of the available sets, which was not something we'd ever done before at that time. It's not something I'd really thought about, but we'd done something a little similar in the Brothers War, where you could you got a choice between 2 packs, and one of them came from an Explorer legal set from the past. But we never really just said you can choose any pack from the history of Arena
Hmm.
before this. And so I think part of the motivating thing in this design was we were actually a little worried about our old packs going to somehow be too powerful, uh, which today seems kind of silly, right? That's why I think when we revisited this concept in Edge of Eternities,
Yeah.
we didn't really worry about that because modern sets are pushed so hard. And maybe we worried a little too little about that
Right.
in Edge.
It got
Uh,
powerful quickly in that tournament.
yeah, because each week we got super powerful sets available for selection, and so the offsets there. actually were more powerful than the main set, which is unusual. Most of the time that we've been designing leagues, or that I have, the current set is usually the most powerful set, with some notable exceptions.
Well, Wilds of Eldraine. We'll get to that.
And even this set turned out to be so powerful. That's part of the context too, right? Which we never know when we're doing the designs. This set turned out to be so powerful that even revisiting, the free choice of packs 3 years later or whatever it is, it was one of the most selected packs. It kind of took over the league. It was still extremely powerful compared to other sets.
It was,
So that's part of the context.
The set was juiced. Absolutely.
It was juiced.
I remember being a big proponent, speaking of the design notes, I remember being a big proponent of the battle mechanic. And I liked the idea of like having, I do think maybe it's, I'm still thinking of if we could do a technical workaround, but I do like the idea of, you meeting on a plane, doing a battle there, and then sort of like whoever wins the match or whoever loses the match gets the pack there. It's kind of like interesting flavor. This is a bit more abstract, but also a bit more manageable of a design. And it's sort of, I think the idea of having a battle on a plane makes the scale too small for what's happening. Like just seeing like planes collapse at the end of the week had more of a kind of sweeping feel to it. So I think probably the right flavor won in the end.
Well, we nailed that, right? And that's a problem I have sometimes with design, is that I really want to get like granular and nitty gritty and really flavor driven. But sometimes you can capture the flavor on like a more abstracted high level that's a little bit more of an elegant, solution, which is where I think we landed with this. Like I remember some of the feedback about this came, I think it was Sawyer was saying, okay, but like, is this really a good flavor fit? Like, this is like Phyrexia winning, right? The league we ended up doing. They're conquering, and that's not really the narrative of the set, which is like they get defeated. And, I think like fair point, but we don't need to be that anchored, right? Like we captured the thing that was happening, which was the oppression of the invasion, right? The like hopeless feeling. And like we don't need to totally mirror the exact storyline or anything like that. I think we really got that little piece of it, that bit of here's the invasion, it's intense, planes are collapsing. That bit I think really resonated, really was an interesting outcome. And I think those helped me grow a lot in how I look at league design and what's going to engage people, and how important those kind of like collective moments are, especially if they tie into some decision making. Like that's just perfect.
Yeah, I can't agree more. But given that look back, would you do anything differently if you had to rerun this league today and say, if we did a flashback league and they say we're going back to March of the Machine? Would you, for instance, like change something like the threshold for planar collapse to a certain number of packs rather than just the most popular, the most predictably popular sets per week? Like, let's say that we talked a little bit about that with regard to Edge of Eternities, but sort of backed off it. Like each planet would have a sort of like resource cap that once the packs were drained, it would just collapse whenever the last pack was taken, versus waiting till the end of the week. I tend to think now that maybe that's, even though it might be quote unquote, unfair depending on when you play your matches in the week, I think you can kind of see it coming and you can kind of work around it if you're proactive in how you play your tournament. I do think maybe that is a better way to regulate power in the league, in these kinds of leagues, is to set a hard cap. Like say 25 packs can come from, I don't know, what was most powerful back then, Ikoria or whatever, and no more.
Yeah.
Then that plane's collapsed. That battle's run out of counters or whatever.
There's a couple layers to this question. Would I go back and change anything that we did in March of Machine? No, I don't think so.
Right.
I think we hit that pretty perfectly. There was no power issue here because March of Machines was by far the most powerful set. So it did create an interesting tension of, do you take the most powerful set first? You'll realize the most benefit. But then you're eventually going to have to take offsets, and all of the best offset packs are being taken off the board during
Yeah.
your first couple of weeks when you're only taking March of the Machine.
I think there's some
I
sweet
thought that
tension there for
tension
sure.
played out beautifully.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, when we did revisit this with a cap on the total number of packs, I might have changed the Edge of Eternity's version of this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see what you're saying. I think it would be an interesting experiment to run a league where you run out of packs just whenever you run out of packs. That would really put a lot of pressure on good sets very fast.
Yeah.
It would feel unfair, but I'm okay with certain types of unfairness. I've made this pitch a couple of times before. I think I'd rather tournaments be fun than perfectly fair. But this is close to the line. It's close to the line to say, if you play on Friday, you get access to the set, and if you play on Saturday, you don't. That's right at the boundary of what I think is okay unfairness. So maybe in a 3-week league or something like that. I think it'd be tough in a full league. There might be ways to balance it. There might be ways to get that tension right, where you're trying to race, but also you want to get the newest pack instead of an old pack. It's an interesting question. But I think looking just the question of would I have changed the league we actually delivered here? No.
Yeah.
I loved it. I think it was great.
With
Maybe find a way to power it down. It was very powerful. It was the first time I'd really been worried about power level in League.
Yeah, in terms
just
of
in
the,
terms
the
of
spectator though, there were some haymakers being thrown. There were some pretty wild spectating moments, just board states that you wouldn't really see unless you were playing with an absolutely juiced set like we were.
well, yeah, we saw the return of companions right in this
Yeah.
set, which was wild too.
Whew.
So lots of decks were running a companion that you could open in the bonus sheet. I mean, the rare counts were super high. This almost felt like the first play booster set in a way because of the random included bonus sheet, because of the number of rares you could open in a pack, which was 3 or 4, I think. There were some really intense, even just starting pools that went deep into the tournament without losing. Like a lot of people went into the last week with only 4 or 5 losses, if I recall correctly, which is pretty crazy.
So, like looking back then with perfect knowledge, would you dial down the max cap on March of the Machine packs from 5 to 3 or something like that?
It's tough to say. So we ran into problems with that too, because if you do that, then whoever has the best starting pools often become uncatchable. You're watering down the comeback mechanic. I mean, with today's knowledge and technology, maybe you do something like weaken the starting pools,
Right.
so that that accomplishes it, and then the comeback mechanic is stronger instead of weaker. It's the same sort of solution, but
Yeah.
I
Hobble
think
them
that's
off
something
the
I'm
block.
really liking.
But that's another thing too that we haven't really talked about, given that the at least the last couple of universes beyond tournaments we've run, we've fudged the pack contents. Would you have considered taking out the bonus legendary sheet or something like that to help regulate the power of the set, or do you think that sometimes it's all right to let people have their fun and play with their juiced cards? Because I'm of the mind that I do like people to have moments of fun, and I think that maybe it makes it a bit more of let's say a lottery in terms of if you get the bomb cards or not. But I think that novice players need that edge. They need the sort of like the help sometimes against our relatively spiky player base. So I think that sometimes it's okay to let good cards slip through the net so that people can have fun with them.
Yeah, I got a bunch of different opinions on this. I think my preference is often to bring the power level down a little bit, and this was a league where the power level felt a bit too high for me. But like sometimes too high for me is the right power level. Like we should be doing some leagues like that, So my personal preference is lower the power level a bit, but I don't always need to have leagues reflect my preference. And I had a good time playing this league despite that. I think this was a bonus sheet that was not like current bonus sheets. We've seen a lot of recent bonus sheets that feel pretty arbitrary. They're not integrated into the set in any meaningful way, and they contain really powerful game dominating cards just sort of out of nowhere. This didn't feel like that. It was thematically connected to the set. The whole idea of legendary creatures from around the multiverse joining in to fight against the Phyrexian invasion. That felt not arbitrary to me. That wasn't just, here's an Atraxa, go. Although I think Atraxa was literally one of them.
I believe, yeah.
As was Ragavan. But
some offenders there for sure.
Yeah, this was a bonus sheet that I'm glad we left in. One of the ideas that we pitched was to put that same bonus sheet into the offset packs that were being opened to sort of equalize a bit between the March of the Machine and offset packs. So that was kind of a little bit along the lines of where we end up going later on with custom packs, but I think we didn't end up doing that, and it was totally fine also, and probably from a power level perspective, better that we didn't add even more of these powerful cards in. But
well,
yeah,
yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, I agree with you. We should have crazy powerful stuff stuck in there, just sparingly.
But I called you in for because you're wearing two hats, three if you count your Toronto Blue Jays hat. The one hat was a designer hat, and the other hat is of a player. So, as a player who eventually won this tournament, I'm assuming that your memories are much clearer than mine about the feel of the tournament. Do you have any sort of anecdotes or notes about how it felt to push forward in this tournament?
Well, yeah. So my memory of this is it was a really, really polarized tournament in terms of the people who had super strong starting pools dominated the entire league, including myself. But there were a number of players. I think we had some people finishing up around, 24 wins total. Some real runaways, and that was possible because I do think this was a push set, not just in terms of number of rares in a pack, but just the general design of the uncommons and the different mechanics that they chose were really powerful, but I found them really fun. So, this was a set, it had the backup mechanic. I really like that.
Right.
Where a creature comes in and puts a counter on something and you gain its abilities. That was very powerful, very cool mechanic that was in this. It also had
basic land cycling was there as a sort of
yes. It had the land cycling creatures and also a graveyard theme, so you could cycle huge 7-drops into your graveyard and then reanimate them or copy them and things like that. It had just crazy bombs, right? There was the Atali in here, Breach the Multiverse, some other cards like that. It had Convoke on instance.
Yep.
That was crazy as well, and really, I found that gameplay element very complex, very interesting. So I remember I was running a Dimir, possibly Sultai deck, which involved milling most of my own deck and just tons of cards that interacted with my own library.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just dominant. I've had maybe 2 decks like this in the entire time I've played League. This and Tarkir Dragonstorm was up there where I won the pennant. Just in terms of bombs, but also really powerful cards, right up and down, commons, uncommons, the whole way through, and just, even with very few comeback packs, a really tight, synergistic deck.
It's a good feeling.
And I think that was kind of what it was. Some people had that, and some people didn't have that at all, and then were crushed. So,
yeah, I think the last time I felt fully this way was maybe all the way back in Ikoria when I had my double Gyruda deck, one in the command zone and one in the main, and just every card in my deck, it was just ready to be milled and ready to be put into play for free, and just ramping up to that magic number 6. Real feel good, I felt
how I felt with this.
I felt insulated.
The invasion of Ikoria card.
I felt like I could trust my deck, to deliver the goods. As long as I did my
Yeah.
bare minimum to to get up to 6 and start flipping the bombs, I felt like I was okay. Yeah, but if you have that feeling, dear viewer, then hang on. One day you'll open up your bomb pool and you'll get to just coast to the finish line. Let's talk a little bit about that finish line, the Mega Draft itself. So we had a kind of unique format for the Mega Draft. We started with one pack of March of Machines, and then the next 5 packs were the most frequently chosen non-March of the Machine sets that were chosen from weeks 1 through 5. And then with a bonus pack of Aftermath for each player as a little dessert to your 6-course meal.
We ended up not doing that, right? I'm almost certain that we excluded that.
Gosh.
So part of what I was saying before was one of the concepts that we kept coming back to is how are we going to incorporate Aftermath into this?
Yeah.
Because I think at the time we published the rules, and maybe even at the time of launch, we just didn't really know anything about it. We kind of had a vibes, but not like what it actually would be. And even that it was small packs came late in the day.
Wizards keeps
so there were all these
close to
ideas
his chest, yeah, unfortunately for us.
that there were these concepts that we would get a pack of that during the league, or that we'd have a huge thing late in the league where all of your rares get swapped out for rares from Aftermath, or that there would be a 2-3 week leagues, one of them with Mom, the other with Aftermath. Those were all things that were pitched. And then I think in the end, we were like, okay, let's just put it in the Mega Draft. And then we saw what it was, which was just this tiny, uninteresting set that wasn't in any way connected to the limited environment, which was very surprising, I think, to all of us. And it wasn't even fun, limited playable cards. A lot of the rares were just kind of bizarre niche effects. And we didn't do that, right? In the end, we did not put the Aftermath packs in the Mega Draft. We didn't use them at all in the set. Kind of felt like a fail, but then it didn't feel like our fail, really. I don't think anybody was sad we didn't get that in our Mega Draft decks.
All I can say is one day, all this digital real estate on Arena, I'm gonna find some use for it. I'm gonna find some sort of league where we get to use all these toys that we don't get to play with. All the bonus sheet cards that were cut out for Final Fantasy and Spider-Man, the Aftermath sets, the too long neglected, Adam, too long neglected Jumpstart cards. We're gonna find a place, a home for all these sad toys, where they can.
You should be playing Fantasy Magic Ball. Johnny is running this league, like super complex, not a league, but running this side event, which is done fantasy football style. So you have to fill your deck as like a roster where you need to have 1 planeswalker, 12 creatures, 4 instants and sorceries. And we had to draft these cards in little packets of cards that you draft. Then there was like a trading period, and then a waivers period, and a free agency. So we're just starting this, but we've already been doing it for 2 weeks. But he included in that a bunch of these cards. In part, I think, to make it so that you can't just use data to figure out what the best cards are or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, like my deck has some Aftermath cards in it. It has one of the Spider-Man bonus cards, the Saw in Half.
Nice.
It's got a bunch of the Jumpstart cards that I've never seen played anywhere.
Great.
So you would love that. You should have joined in for that one.
I would have accepted. The time commitment is fairly intense, I believe. And look,
it's so intense.
Even Roto was too quick for me. And people like, boo, take your card. And I'm like, come on, I've got 12 hours. Like, nobody uses the full 12 hours. Just pick and go. But I was like, I don't know, guys. I just like my schedule.
It can be a bit intense for sure. As soon as if your schedule really picks up.
Yeah. Exactly.
Roto, I find too crazy, and the Fantasy Magic Ball is by far the most intense.
To be fair though, I applaud what Johnny's doing. I support the event in theory. It's just in practice, it would be a big drag on my life. I got things going on, Adam. I do right now.
You are an important person. It's true.
But
It's the most fun draft I've maybe ever done.
no kidding.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's like a roto style draft. We did it with a lot of people, but I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the trading period. So yeah. Anyway, it's found a home for these cards, and the cards are fun.
Yeah.
It just kind of was an interesting period for Wizards where they thought this was going to be the thing, was releasing these
Mm.
aftermath style sets, and they were just not going to be draftable.
Yeah.
There were going to be packs with repeats, like there was no duplicate protection. The whole set was only 50 cards. Like, you look at it and you're just, why was this what they thought the future was? Like and it screwed up design for years to come. They're still kind of,
Well, Spider-Man.
I mean, arguably the Spider-Man set that's out right now
Yeah.
is still just an offshoot of this idea that we were going to have 5 or 7 card packs that weren't limited draftable. And because they had to scrap it, we got, Thunder Junction, where they just threw that in as a bonus sheet and warped the whole set. And then we got Spider-Man, where they padded it out with some draft chaff and handed it to us to do a new draft format.
Oh,
So, yeah, weird decision, and I was happy we kind of left that in the past. The Mega Draft
yeah.
for this was one of my favorite
Talk us through it, Adam.
drafts I've ever done as well. I just said that about Fantasy Magic Ball, but I mean, I loved the draft for this and the matches. I played against just some incredible players along the way. I think I started against Caleb. I'm going to forget who else. I think Pierre Marc was the final against me. And just incredible games. Especially the final was really tightly played. That's a great one to go back and rewatch. It was just right down to the wire and super well played. So I felt like really dialed in for that. That's some of the best Magic I've played and some of the best drafting I've done. I can remember the deck that I played for it. Loved it.
Tell us about it. Let's get granular.
Well, it had a couple of bombs. So I was, to be fair, I was the beneficiary of a couple of bombs, which I do think is an important thing in a Mega Draft.
Right.
More than elsewhere, because you can't get the tight synergy that you can get sometimes elsewhere. So I opened from Mom the Elspeth, or whatever it is, blend into it.
Okay.
Archangel Elspeth, I think is maybe the name of that one.
Okay.
And that was just a stone cold bomb that took over games. But I also got past Rabble Rousing from SNC, which is a 5-mana enchantment. I want to say it has Hideaway, so you can get a free card off it. And basically, whenever you attack with any number of creatures, you make that many 1/1s.
God.
Maybe they're tapped at attacking. It's something like that. And yeah, that also, between those two cards, if I could get either one out, it was pretty tough to beat me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just a fun deck in general. Then I kind of built I think it was a blue-white Flyers deck around those two bombs, and it played very well. A little bit of the Convoke stuff from Merch of the Machines, which I loved. So very, very good deck. Very fond memories of that one.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty much. I don't know. I don't have much more to say about March of the Machine, honestly, Adam. Unless you do, you have any more to say about the set? I feel like it's maybe its legacy is probably its most important dimension in that. There's not much to fix about it because I think it pretty much hit the nail on the head. I guess its legacy is looking at chaos. I mean, it's kind of like controlled chaos, another take on controlled chaos in that, there's lots of player agency and there's evaluation. Some people would say, right, that allowing weaker sets in the mix from the get-go is providing too much of an opportunity to allow new players to fall into traps. Like, I know that people are down on M19, for example. If someone said, well, I've never played M19, let's see what that set's about. I'll take a pack from M19 in my March of the Machine League. What would you say to people who would say, well, that's a bit of a trap. We shouldn't allow that to happen?
Yeah, so in my design, I do try to get rid of traps where I can, because I do think it's a bad experience to include random traps for people, and it's particularly punishing for players who don't have a lot of format experience. So that is some of the negative feedback we've gotten on this type of mechanic, and it's feedback I really struggle with. Is like I just don't know sets from 5 years ago,
Hmm.
so this format becomes a like test of, hey, do you know Ikoria, right? Which just some players weren't around then, have never revisited it. So I do think that's a real piece of feedback and one that should keep us from going too deep. It also gets, obviously, it just exponentially grows now that we're getting 6, 7 sets a year, right? The number of sets you have to know to play in a league where you can just choose any pack gets more and more.
Yeah, I mean that argument
And
doesn't really move me necessarily. You don't need like a degree in advanced magic to look up Scryfall, set lists, right, and see what's in the set and look up rarity distributions. I mean, like the idea. Well, I never played X, so you shouldn't use X as an ingredient in your tournament. I don't
yeah,
know. You could probably do a little research, right? If it meant that much to you. I mean, there should be at least some of this tournament that rewards careful study, and at least having one or two thoughts about strategy. And yeah, we got to look out for the new player experience, but we also have to find ways to entertain people who have been with the format for a while or who have been playing Magic for years. And I do think part of the appeal is that there are some old toys on the table that you might want to revisit just for nostalgia's sake, right? Let's say, for example, that I'm scrubbing out of March of the Machine League, and I say, well, fuck it, I'm going to put in a M20 just to just to put the perfect icing on this shit cake of a tournament that I'm playing in, right? To get dirty mouth for a moment here, Adam. I'm taking this outside the familiar here a little bit.
yeah.
I mean, what's wrong with that in prospect? I think nothing.
Well, that one, there's nothing wrong with that example where you're doing it consciously.
Mm,
And to a degree, there's nothing wrong with saying this tournament is going to reward people with a bit of past format knowledge,
yeah,
right? So I do think we should minimize that where we can, but it is an okay thing to test as part of our tournament. You have to pick a pack, you need to be able to assess a set. I don't think that's the end of the world. I don't think we want every league to be about that, and it
no.
clearly alienates a portion of the player base.
I
So
think
I,
it's a
I
pretty
think it's
small
something
portion, though, right? And
I,
I
I
think
don't
I
want to
think
give up.
it's caveat emptor. If you're wondering whether a set's good, I don't know. Ask one of the 200 to 300 other players in the tournament that you're in
Yes.
what
Yeah.
they think. It's a point of engagement, right? That's a positive for me. If the tournament design makes you ask questions about strategy or card evaluation or set evaluation, I think that's added value, right? That's a chance for you to
Yeah.
speak to somebody else and say, "Hey, new to Magic, how is M21? Is it gonna nitro charge my league deck?" Ask anybody;
So I
they'll
will
tell you.
I will say yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'm here for that, and I do think this has a place,
yeah,
even knowing that it's a little unfair to some people and that it puts some people off, which I do take into account, and
sure.
I think it means we use it less than we might otherwise. Uh, but sometimes, whatever it is, once a year, we can have a league where we're going to just let you choose from this really wide range of things, and that's going to punish people without the knowledge, and that's okay. And yes, they're open. They can obviously do research and figure it out. Some people that's not the experience they want. They don't want to be reading about 30 different sets
Right.
and trying to figure out which one's going to help their particular limited deck better. But still, agree with all of your points there. I mean, one reason not to allow traps is that you just don't want, for tournament integrity, or at least for tournament experience, you don't want players taking garbage sets and being hopeless the whole tournament, right? Like that's not just a bad experience for that player. It starts to create odd things where a player who should have a strong week 5 deck or whatever, week 3 deck, because they've lost so much, really just still has their starting pool plus a couple of cards. We saw that a bit in Edge of Eternities, where some people were just taking one of each different pack, so no synergies, and just unpickable sets, in my opinion. Sets that should never be taken over, when the options were Thunder Junction, Merchant of Machines. And those people are presumably not only players with as much play experience, I mean, just stereotyping who's going to make that choice, but also now they're taking away good cards from themselves effectively. I think that's a worse tournament experience where you have 5% of the league who are just eventually free wins instead of
Right.
super strong competitive decks later on. So I think that's a good reason not to allow or encourage people to pick M19 the whole way. That said, sometimes I think it's appropriate to do a league where you have that option, and if you fall into that trap, you fall into that trap and rub out.
Well, I guess too, I think we provide unique play experiences where you can get experiences with the Arena Gauntlet League that you can't get in other tournament series. I think part of that is having points of contact with older cards or older sets that have rotated off of Arena's, most frequently played, sets. I think that these kinds of flashback leagues or leagues that include packs that you don't see anymore, I think it's pretty spicy for me. But that could be a matter of taste, and I agree with you. But I tell you what, if we think of a mechanic for a league that positively impacts 95% of the players and only negatively impacts 5%, I think we got to run with that sometimes. And because there's a lot of other things that we could be doing which would negatively impact a much wider band of our player base. So. I think it's.
Well, I do think. I think the current set designs that we're on also. So we did revisit this recently in Edge of Eternities, as we mentioned, and we saw some of these pitfalls there. But right around that, we've done 2 now sets with custom packs, which let us, in a much, I think, better way, bring in cards from Ixalan or whatever, just as a one-off common in your pack, rather than as a whole pack that you got to choose instead of a pack of Thunder Junction, say, right? And I think that's just a much better solution to get that thing that you're describing. Again, there's room for both. I'm glad we did this concept again in Edge of Eternities. But, there's also ways now that we've developed and that we have experience doing where you can get those interaction points with old cards either in a curated way or, the way we've been using slots in the custom packs. It's not curated. It's really just Scryfall searches that hit on a certain mechanic, for example, or a certain card type.
I don't know if you watched last Leagues Behind, but again, with Richard, we sort of developed this vocabulary of soft curation versus hard curation, right? Where hard curation targets one card specifically or one set specifically, whereas soft curation is the kind of Scryfall search where you're looking for a property rather than a specific card. Right.
Yes, yeah. I love that, by the way. That's what we did. We leaned really far into that for the current set design, Spider-Man. And I love that. Like, some people were actually saying, oh, this feels like it was just easier than curating. And I was like, well, no, like, I like that we set this up to be like, just give us cards that discard cards, right? Like, I just want every card that's whatever, Explorer legal, to use that, that has a discard on it, whatever it is. And we're going to have one slot in the villain packs for that. And I just think that's so interesting because you get these really odd cards from the games past popping up in your packs, and you think, like, can I use this? Does this work? It fits thematically into this deck I'm building. I love that. I love just sort of the little bit of randomness instead of it being so heavily curated, and especially when the curation is like focused on getting things into a power band. I think really like that. I like that concept, soft curation. That's one of the things I'm really enjoying about recent league designs, is a bit of that soft curation going on.
One of the criticisms Richard had was that it ends up with sometimes having like a looter effect on a 1/2 flying creature that needs a snow mana to activate. So it's a bit of a dud. But I think it's okay sometimes to have dud cards pop up in your pack. I mean, it has always happened that way. There is always the pack that has the rare, which is one with nothing, or a dual land that's not in your colors, or whatever, right? There's always misses and there's always big hits, and I think that's part of what makes limited play fun, right? Is that you are opening packs, you are seeing cards that you didn't really, you couldn't have planned to play with or against. So I don't know. I think that there's probably more development we could do in this area, and I think possibly more sophisticated kind of Scryfall tweaking and coding that we could do in advance. If this were seen as a popular mechanic, after another 4 weeks of play with it's gone on, and God knows what the ultimate reception of the tournament will be, right? That we don't know yet. We're still in the midst of it. Yeah, so I think that there's something to be said about that for sure. We'll explore it more. Maybe when we looked at Spider-Man in Leagues Behind in a couple of years.
Yeah,
But that's all the time we have for today.
looking forward to that.
Huh?
So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I can win this league. You can have me back on.
When the snake eats its tail and Leagues Behind starts eating Leagues Ahead sets that we've covered previously.
Ooh, what date is that? How long? What was the first Leagues Ahead?
Gosh, that's a good question. I have to dig back in the annals of the YouTube channel to find out. But I will commemorate when it happens. I'll introduce some sort of unique either sound effect or visual effect in the podcast, which I don't attempt at all. So that'll be a pretty exciting moment for the viewership.
Or maybe you could have it be you rewatching the Leagues Ahead.
Oh,
commenting
like a director's cut commentary track over it.
with the benefit of hindsight.
What we didn't know was.
Exactly.
All right, Adam. Thanks for your time, and thanks for looking back at March of the Machine with me. Appreciate your perspective and your efforts as always. So thank you.
Anytime.
Bye for now.
Bye.